Today's video is about end of KVK rewards, specifically how the Autarch Testimony system works. So stick around in this video for the things you need to know when deciding your end of KVK rewards. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms. And when I was looking through on YouTube to see, hey, has anyone made a video about how exactly Autarch testimonies work, I realized I hadn't made one and I couldn't find anybody else who had made one. So here we are to talk about the Autarch testimony system when you hold the ziggurat at the end of KVK. Now, I don't know if this is how it works for KVK seasons 1 through 3, so let's just stick to Season of Conquest. That's KVK season 4 and beyond, technically anyways. So the Autarch Testimony is a special reward. It's a passport to extra goodies. If you have an Autarch Testimony, then when you go into the shop, you can get one of the Autarch limited inscriptions. It basically means you need a loot passport in order to then spend one of your coins over here, your conquest coins, in order to buy one of the Autarch limited inscriptions. Now, if you don't have an Autarch Testimony, at least you can still go in and get one of the non-limited inscriptions, and these are still pretty good. Now, we'll review what exactly these inscriptions do a little bit later in the video, but the whole Autarch system is really designed around getting access to these particular inscriptions. So how does it work? Well, initially, it was a little unclear if you're just looking at the sort of Autarch board, but once the Zig opens, then you can look at the Autarch list. Let me explain. If you get an Autarch Testimony, you'll get 2 legendary formation choice chests, you'll get a couple speed ups here and a couple keys. However, you can either click the Zig or click the Autarch list to see the following. Whomever is holding the Zig, their coalition gets 240 Autarch Testimonies. Now, in addition, there are 60 more legendary Autarch Testimonies that are distributed among the other coalitions. Now, it is a little weird to me that other coalitions can only receive these legendary Autarch Testimonies. What I think the developers are doing with this system is saying, hey, we only want there to be one definitely stronger than all the other alliances in the sort of, I don't know, coalition that gets the testimonies. There should be one war camp that is stronger than all the others. I think that's what the design is trying to say. Because, you know, look, in my perfect world, we actually would be able to decide wherever these 300 would go. I don't particularly know why one coalition needs to lock up the full 240 on top of all the other Zig prizes, okay? But that's how it works. So just to be extremely clear, as of this moment, the Cat Coalition holds the Zig. That means they can put 240 Autarch Testimonies into these alliances. And then within those alliances, they decide how they're going to distribute them among their members. Now, that leaves 60 testimonies for all other coalitions that are not holding the Zig. So whomever is holding the Zig can distribute, again, the 240 among their coalition, and then they have 60 to distribute among literally every other coalition on the map, and they can decide how many go to each coalition. Now, I want to just read the rules so that we've got this sort of documented in history for, you know, at this moment in time, here's how they worked. So the alliance that occupies the Zig has a chance to become an Autarch alliance, allowing them to grant Autarch Testimonies to all alliances in the coalition. Autarch Testimonies can only be granted by the leader of an Autarch alliance, and only to their own coalition. Legendary Autarch Testimonies can be granted by the Autarch alliance leader to any coalition in the Lost Kingdom. So I feel like it would be nice if the naming here was maybe a little bit more clear, that these are like 2 different things. Again, Autarch Testimony can only be distributed to the alliance or coalition, rather, that's holding the ziggurat, whereas the legendary Autarch Testimonies can go anywhere else. The Autarch Alliance's leader will first grant Autarch Testimonies and legendary Autarch Testimonies to their coalition and other coalitions. The leaders of those coalitions can then grant those testimonies to the leaders of their member alliances, who can then grant them to their alliance members. Holy moly. If a coalition is occupying the Great Zig at the end of the Lost Kingdom, all members of that coalition with an Autarch testimony will receive an Autarch reward. Now, this is kind of interesting. If a coalition is occupying the Great Ziggurat at the end of the Lost Kingdom, all members of that coalition with an Autarch testimony receive the Autarch reward. Okay, I understand now. They use this word Autarch all over the place. It takes me a second to sort it out. I guess what they're differentiating here is that the testimony is your passport to goodies, and the Autarch reward is those 2 legendary choice crates for armaments plus the small amount of other rewards. Now, this next one is a little bit weird, and maybe someone can help explain this. I think I understand it, but it says, if an alliance no longer meets the requirements to qualify for Autarch status, all Autarch testimonies will be invalid until the end of the event. This is a little weird to me. I don't understand what this is saying. This could mean several things. It could mean that if you assign the Autarch testimonies and then whomever owns the Zig changes, that Autarch testimonies are just dead for the rest of the KVK, which doesn't make any sense to me. That seems really illogical. If I try to interpret this in the most logical way possible, I think what this is saying is that if you assigned Autarch testimonies and you're no longer holding the Zig, then your assignments become invalid and they can be reassigned. It would be nice if it was clear in saying that, like, those testimonies can be reassigned or must be reassigned or something along those lines, right? And then they say governors who've already obtained an Autarch reward will not be able to obtain other rewards from the occupation point leaderboard. Now, you may be looking at this going, wait, what the heck is the occupation point leaderboard? Well, if we go back over here to the occupation rewards, there are other rewards. If you are not a governor with an Autarch testimony, then you fall into one of these categories. You're either number 1, 2 through 3, 4 through 5, 6, 7, or 8 in that board. And these are visible, by the way, if I go to the Expedition Leaderboard, and I guess we go to Alliance, I think this is what they're talking about, the Occupation Leaderboard. Now, the Zig is worth like 5,000 points, quite literally. So I don't know how you would ever not be number 1 and be holding the Zig at any moment in time. I just don't know how that would happen. So number 1 is going to go to the alliance that is holding the Zig. And the only thing that I think we need to unpack there is that if you're holding the Zig, I think at that point you're qualifying for an Autarch, so you may not actually be number 1 there. I think you get the Autarch instead, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure how that works. But the thing we really need to talk about, right, these rewards, they're fine. Okay? The thing we really need to talk about, however, is this Autarch list, getting a testimony, whether it's the legendary testimony or the regular testimony, and then going to pick up these rewards, right? Because these rewards are really strong. You could review these anytime, but I'll just talk very briefly about the ones that I think are particularly strong. And we'll start with the one for Arch Formation. Now remember, a legendary inscription can only go on a legendary armament. And when you inscribe an armament, it replaces all existing inscriptions on the armament. So if you thought you could, over time, apply these and make a really wicked armament with multiple inscriptions, you cannot. Still, the best way, or maybe not the best way, but the best possible armament is only available from the crates that have armaments, because they can have a legendary inscription and a regular inscription. And we have seen that happen. Yoda 808, strongest player by power in the game, has one of those. I think it's like Hunter and Robust. So he's got this inscription giving a bunch of extra skill damage, and it's also got Robust, which is pretty wild. Now, the big advantage of the inscriptions, by the way, is that you should be putting these onto an armament, ideally, where you don't have to use any of your transmutation stones to reroll the stats. It's already got super high rolls for a bunch of stats. That's the core idea. So for the arch formation, which in my estimation is best for garrisons that are getting swarmed, the wielder's troop deals 3.5% extra normal attack damage. Whenever it launches a normal attack, their troop has a 10% chance to spend 100 rage, but increase the next attack by 70%. It's got a cooldown of 5 seconds. Again, I feel like if you're getting swarmed a lot, the ability to have your normal attack damage boosted by 70% and just start wrecking the swarmers seems really good. This is triggered off your normal attack damage, so I think this is best served in a garrison capacity, but it also works for rallies where you're worried about it getting swarmed and you really want to just do as much damage to the swarmers as possible. The, I would say, arguably best inscription in the shop is right over here. It's Hunter. I've been talking about how wedge formation is the jam for a long time. That's the skill damage formation for the open field. This is, I think, just the way to go. And what does it do? You get 5% extra skill damage, and if you're doing single target damage, you do an extra 10% damage. Otherwise, you'll boost your skill damage by 2%, and that cooldown is for 5 seconds. So once every 5 seconds, you can really boost your skill damage, which seems like you could crank out, Tadic Ibn Ziyad with 15% extra skill damage. Hello. That's insane. Less good for Sargon, I think, for obvious reasons here, because it's got a cooldown of 5 seconds. Although Sargon does single target damage, it's really just boosting, I think, your next direct damage, skill damage to a target. So, GG. Up next, the Sharpshooter Inscription. I don't know that there's any reason to even talk about this. Ranged formations are, at this moment in time, really not a thing. I will say that whenever you launch a ranged normal attack, 10% chance to spend 50 rage to increase the damage seems kind of interesting. I could get behind it, except who's using range marches? Literally nobody in the endgame. So I feel like that still needs a lot of looking at. I know it's about to get patched to be more usable, so we'll see. It could become relevant, okay? Influential Leader. What does this do? If you're in the echelon formation, which as of right now, there's not a lot of reason to be there. Trajan with Mulan is pretty much the reason, and I don't think Trajan Mulan is the best open field version of Trajan anyways. So I would hope that at some point the developers add more stuff that makes this more relevant, but this effect is great. I mean, generate rage 5% faster, and their troops' normal attacks have a 10% chance to increase the attack of 3 nearby friendly targets, not including itself, by 15% for 3 seconds. Ooh, okay. Let's go. Very cool effect here. The only other hero I can think of, or commander that could be good for this, is William. And the thing about William is that, like, he's best paired with Huo right now. So there's only one of the 2 commanders in that pairing that actually benefits from this particular inscription. You really want both the commanders to be getting the benefit of both being an echelon and, really enjoying everything that has to offer. So, up next, Cocoon. I have a suspicion, and this goes one of 2 ways. Option number 1 is the developers make infantry more about shielding, and they give us more meta shielding commanders, in which case Cocoon becomes super, super valuable for garrisoning and rallying. Or we don't get those things, and it just is a super niche, I don't know why anyone would pick it, sort of an option. So I'm inclined to believe that because they put this in the game, we're going to get infantry that are really focused on shielding. We saw this recently with Pyrrhus, and we also saw this recently with the epic commander whose name I can't remember, Pericles? I can't remember his name right now, but doesn't really matter. Cocoon. Increase skill damage resistance by 5%. Now, I talked to support about this, and I was like, hey, what's the difference between damage reduction and damage resistance? And they said that they are both damage mitigation effects, but they take place in different parts of the combat formula. So I don't exactly know which is better, damage reduction or damage resistance. However, this gives you 5% resistance, and their troops' normal attacks have a 10% chance to increase the strength of any shields it receives by 10% for 5 seconds. I mean, at this moment in time, the only combo where you could say, like, oh yeah, this would be really good, is actually going to be Hera YSS. And for that combo, both of them do shields, and it's an anti-swarm garrison. You'd be like, yeah, this is good. And I'm not going to deny that it is. I just would like to see this be more relevant in more situations. From here, rich. Man, I don't know. 25% gold gathering speed. Look, if this gave a more universal gathering speed, I could see this being something that maybe someone tries to justify for their Arc League team, but I find it otherwise unjustifiable to go for the rich inscription. From here, enmeshed. Also another one that I see really no reason to ever go for. The wielder's active skills reduce the march speed of their current target by 20% for 5 seconds. Look, I like reducing march speed of a target as much as anybody else. And I can't imagine a world in which even one of my marches is going for this particular formation. Maybe I will feel differently down the road. Maybe I'll feel like, oh man, I really got to get my infantry on that march speed plan, but I don't see it anytime soon. In a world in which you could have a slow like this, or you could have big damage over here, taking that big damage. And I mean, if we look at what else that particular, inscription pathway offers, that formation, we can look in the codex, and I don't even think like across the whole formation there's that much that's exciting. So here's the enmeshed option, which I mean, okay, slowing enemies is good. Then you have logistical, troop capacity by 5%. I mean, that's actually not bad. That's okay. Unassailed, 50% bonus to march speed when you leave buildings, bruh. And then winged, march speed by 10%. It's fine, but I don't know, man. Is this like an Ark of Osiris League thing? But inscriptions don't work for Ark of Osiris League, and armaments don't work for Ark of Osiris League currently. So I don't know. It's a little confusing as to what we're supposed to be doing with triple line and why someone would go for that. So as of this moment, if I'm going to rank these formations, I'd say wedge is number 1, applicable to most people. Then you've got arch for garrison captains and rallies. And if for some reason you're a pure fielder and you think you can pull it off, then you could go for echelon formation. And I actually, like, unironically think that some of these echelon formation options are like really nuts. Like civilized, which is not a KVK reward. It's just really, really crazy. 25 rage to multiple targets. Hello. Seems really, really good. But I've gone off the deep end on inscriptions here, mostly to say, if you get an Autarch Testimony, okay, the place that I think that ought to go is to your rally leads and garrison captains primarily, then your fielders, because your rally leads and garrison captains are going to dramatically influence the sort of outcome of future KVKs. And from there, even then, I think just wedge is like such an obvious choice. Now, with all that said, if you don't get an Autarch Testimony, you do have a great option down here, and that is the well-clad, nope, just kidding, not the well-clad, the robust inscription. That's the one. 3.5% health. This is the jam for a non-limited testimony, and I think every KVK, you want to get one of these and get, in my opinion, it's just robust. Like, it's just get that. 3.5% health. Defense is good, okay, but health is better. You've got the option of march speed. Man, that is really a bad choice. Really, really bad. And even at the legendary quality here, for whatever reason, look, 1 talent point gives you 1% of stats. 1 talent point gives you 3% of march speed. Okay, so wait a minute. In a world in which I could have 3.5% of stats or 2.5% march speed, hello? It's like so obvious the stats are better. From there, retaliatory, extra counterattack damage. I'm not excited about it. Okay. 1.5% normal attack damage really doesn't excite me. Up next is the Calm Inscription. Whenever the wielder's troop deals skill damage, it has a 30% chance to gain a 10% bonus to attack. Man, I just find that so unexciting. And then Pulverize. Whenever the wielder's troop launches a normal attack, it has a 10% chance to gain 20% bonus to normal attack damage for 1 second. Again, I find that really unexciting. I suppose in some ways this is an alternative to the Destructive Inscription. I guess you could consider that, but I don't know. Health just seems fine in all situations. I'd probably just go for health. So that's how I would spend the Conquest coins. You either get Robust or you're probably getting Hunter, maybe Destructive, and possibly sometime in the not too distant future, we'll see infantry come in that make Cocoon relevant. If you enjoyed the vid, do me a favor, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. As I mentioned earlier, I'd love to see Autarch Testimonies be more flexible instead of 240 to the main coalition, but that could actually be a very intentional design choice, pushing teams to be on the side of sort of having one clearly dominant owner of the Zig / strongest contributor to the coalition. To be determined. Until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.